Okay, are we all set to start? Leandro, Ricardo, and Duke, are we all set to start? Duke, do you want to test your microphone? Can you say something, please?
Hi, good morning and good afternoon, South Africa. Let me see. Yeah, okay. I hope. Okay, I'm trying to get the camera on. Yeah, it's on now. All right. Thank you.
Thank
I hope
you.
you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. Thank you.
Good morning, good afternoon. Welcome.
Good morning, Brazil, and good morning to people in South Africa.
Welcome, everyone, to the Brazil-South Africa workshop on advanced digital technologies for ocean science. This is a side event of the All-Atlantic Ocean Research Alliance Forum 2023 scientific event. To do our welcome remarks, we will have representatives from the Embassy of Brazil in Pretoria. We will have a representative from the Department of Science and Innovation of DSI of South Africa, and we'll have a representative from the Ministry of Science, Technology, Innovation, MCTI Brazil. To give his welcome remarks, I invite, please, Mr. Ricardo Bernhard.
Good morning to all the participants in Brazil. Good morning to everyone participating from here in South Africa. My name is Ricardo Bernhard. I'm the head of Science, Technology, and Innovation at the Embassy of Brazil in Pretoria. It's nice to be with you. It's an honor, actually, to have the opportunity to address you on this important occasion. Today's event comes in a very auspicious moment. As you know, South Africa will soon conclude its successful presidency of BRICS during this year. Next year, in 2024, Brazil will preside over the G20, and in 2025, it will be South Africa's turn to do so. And also in 2025, Brazil will lead BRICS. In other words, now and for the next few years, Brazil and South Africa will be very much on each other's minds. And more than that, we will be receiving visits and organizing meetings that bring together government, civil society, the private sector, researchers, and academics. This creates a momentum that we need to translate into concrete initiatives at the bilateral level. It's from this perspective that we see today's workshop. There is remarkable potential for further collaboration between Brazil and South Africa in science, technology, and innovation, mining, finance technologies, renewable energies, clean technologies, transportation, communications, manufacturing. There are opportunities in a diverse number of fields, including, of course, the ocean sciences. Today's workshop builds upon the South-South framework for scientific and technical cooperation in the South and tropical Atlantic and Southern Oceans, developed in 2017 by Brazil and South Africa's respective departments of science and innovation. The framework stresses the importance of collaborative scientific efforts to achieve technological development and innovation as regards the Southern Oceans. It also recognizes the significance of new technologies in deepening our understanding, our capacity to observe, and our ability to make positive and sustainable impact. The workshop will certainly allow us to reflect and move forward on both those fronts, sharing experiences and knowledge on advanced digital technologies for ocean science, especially but not only with respect to artificial intelligence and digitization, will enable us to identify areas of synergy and opportunities for further discussions and collaboration. At the Embassy, We always make a point of emphasizing the benefits of taking a look south, in addition to the partnerships developed with researchers and institutions of the developed countries in the north. This seems particularly crucial when it comes to the scientific study and cooperation regarding the South Atlantic, which we share. We look forward to the discussions today, which we hope will lead to even closer engagements and to new avenues for collaboration. The Embassy, of course, stands ready, as always, to support you in the process. Thank you.
I invite now Mr. Duke Nickenbag, Nikadimeng, sorry. Nick, thank you, from DSI for his welcome remarks.
Thank you very much. I would also like to greet Ricardo and Leandro. And once again, good morning and good afternoon to everyone participating in this meeting. I would like to also start by pointing out that South Africa and Brazil, we share similar development challenges, and over the years, this has resulted in a number of programs that we put in place, a number of joint platforms that we, initiated. From the bilateral point of view, we even, went over to create platforms such as trilateral programs with Brazil and India. And now, as Ricardo also pointed out, we are very active partners within the BRICS group. So we are very excited with that because it has increased the number of scientific exchanges that we have between South Africa and Brazil. And we have got about 20 or so working groups within the BRICS, which have created opportunity for South Africans and Brazilians to know each other through those mechanisms. At the bilateral level, and you correctly pointed out, South Africa we're hosting a lot of those groups this year because we're chairing the BRICS group as a country. So yeah, it has been a very successful year. We also had the ministerial meeting in August where we had the 5 countries participating and also young scientists. So we're creating another layer there for researchers in the future and young people that are beginning to fill in the role of research principals through joint programs that will fund in the future. And bilaterally, we have an agreement as well, signed around 2003. It has been very active. We held, in the last 6-7 years, we held joint workshops in agriculture, focusing on agri-tech startups. Even though some of them happened during the COVID time, they were online. There was yet a huge number of participants from both sides. Around 50 people were able to log on into those programs. Like the other one was on energy, focusing on biofuels. We also looked at innovation ecosystems of both countries, looking at startups broadly. And we also have an active program in space science and astronomy. And we had a workshop on this in the last 6 years. I think it was during COVID time. So we have got very good programs bilaterally. And it's exciting to see that the Oceans Group was also meeting at the margins of the All Atlantic Forum. We are supportive of this. We think that cooperation in this area would also feed into the suite of programs that we have, because this is relatively a new area as well that we are exploring at the bilateral level, even though there are already programs running outside of the bilateral program. So it makes us proud to see that the contact points on this work, I know that they've been meeting over the last 3 years trying to put this program together despite the disruptions of COVID. So this is a success that is finally happening, and we are excited as a department that would bring together these people, these researchers into the Oceans framework, and we look forward to supporting them going forward. I think next year as well, we're proposing a joint meeting between DSI, our department, and MCTI, where we'll have a joint committee meeting to review the work that we have done in the past and also to see how we can then fund and support the current initiatives that have cropped up during the last 5 years, which we have not been able to do because of lockdowns and all that. So we, as you meet today, then we would be looking at ways of supporting this program going forward, and therefore the outcomes of this meeting would have a greater impact on the future of the relations, the trajectory will take in terms of future relations going forward. So I would like to conclude here and wish you the best in terms of deliberations for today. And maybe we'll meet again during the joint committee meeting in 2024. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we will listen to Mr. Leandro Bortoloso Pedron, representative of the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. Thank you.
Thank you, Pinho. Thank you, Ricardo, and thank you, Duke, for your words. I'm very grateful to be here to participate in this Brazil South Africa workshop on advanced technologies for ocean science. I'm speaking on behalf of Secretary Marcia. Unfortunately, she could not be here with you today. As mentioned before, the MCTI, our ministry, I'm Leandro, I'm Director of Department of Thematic Programs. One of these thematic programs is Oceans and Polar Science, so I'm very excited to be here talking to you and see how we can collaborate with each other and South Africa researchers and Brazilian researchers with regard to this such important matter. Our ministry and the Department of Science and Innovation from South Africa have a similar view with regard to the importance of the issue for technology for the bilateral cooperation, as was mentioned, I think, by Ricardo in 2017 with the framework, and the possible benefits that can regard utilizing the new fourth industrial revolution technology for ocean research and management, and not just with regard to the utilizing such innovation, but as well the necessity of making sure that this development of the developing countries are not excluded from the process of participating and gathering the force to develop and participate and collaborate in these initiatives, such as the BRICS, the group for the countries that participate in BRICS. It's important to participate in such process of developing such new technologies and collaborate with one another to make sure that access of tools and new technologies to make even more possible the sustainable blue economy and to utilize the oceans as a sustainable way to improve such economies and to make sure that the environment and nature are not harmed in this process. So the artificial intelligence is a tool that have been quickly developing, and we can put our efforts to extract the possibilities of such new technology. And with reference to this matter, I think it's important to put a point of view regarding the gender, because it's a concern that with the new digitalizations of science, and there is still a barrier, especially in certain branches of information technology. So we need to work together as well to make sure the participation of women in this could be exacerbated and inequalities, and that's necessary to be an attention for both of us. Once again, we'd like to congratulations for all the people who have been working to make sure that the side event could happen, especially our General Coordination of Oceans and Polar Science here in the Ministry, the Department of Science and Technology in South Africa, our Ricardo that is representing our council in Pretoria. So I wish you the best events as possible. I will be hearing you and learning so much throughout this expert research. Once again, thank you for your time, and I wish us wonderful event. Thank you.
Thank you to our welcoming remarks, speakers. We will now go to the two note key speakers, and then I will now invite Dr. Oka Santo, who is a professor from the University of Sao Paulo.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. I would like to share my a small presentation just to guide our thoughts. Yes. Can you see it?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Is it in presentation mode? No.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay. Yes. So I can go there. Okay. So thank you. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm really honored to be here to present this work that we did, and just following what Mr. Duke said, it was a hard work that we did during the pandemic. All the work that we have here started. We had our first meeting in 2020 in February, just at the beginning of the, it was already talking. It was not even a pandemic yet, and we had our first meeting in Brussels, and we got together to discuss about this joint pilot actions that we were supposed to work. And I had the honor to be the coordinator for the work package 5, which it was related to the common standard for information data sharing. So our group was really worried about the problem of the data, how we would be able to get the data out of all the people who are the scientists who are collecting the data, make sure that this data can go to everybody who wants to have access to some scientific information. So since then, we have been working in order to finally, at the end of last year, beginning of this year, we presented the roadmap for the data, sharing the data in the All Atlantic community. So this is part of the initiative led by Anchor. So that's what I'm going to present for you. So always started, when we talk about the declaration, All Atlantic Declaration, and the idea was in respect to the data. It's make sure that we have connection, we can connect, cooperate, and act together. And the idea was from the beginning to build this All Atlantic Ocean Research and Innovation Alliance by try to make all the people around the Atlantic Ocean to get together and work together in terms of not just science, but make sure that we will be able to provide elements for the science to be developed. And it's not strictly science, hard science, as we say, but it's information that all the society could have access to a scientific information. And for that, we would like to promote accessibility, make sure that the data, one collect the data, others can use in different systems. So, it doesn't depend on what kind of format or, the data are collected or stored. And we wanted to make sure that we have transparent knowledge and data systems. It's not something that someone will hold the knowledge of how to store the data, and then I will be so nice that I will distribute the data for you. No, the idea is to have a system that everybody can benefit from the beginning to the end of sharing and using the data. For that, we have to enhance the access to infrastructure, data, and expertise. Especially that third element, it's very important because we have to have expert people. We have to have data scientists, knowledgeable, to make sure that everybody in different parts of the countries around the Atlantic Ocean could have access and who can manage the data. Promote local and indigenous knowledge in the ocean science initiatives. Make sure that all cultural elements are respected. Promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. So everybody has to be in. So that's why we are so much worried about to have this engagement from everybody. So when we started to work on this, what we call the All Atlantic Data Enterprise 2030, which was the name of our joint pilot action. So the idea was to connect all regional data networks, because we know there are lots of data around. People, the scientists have been gathering data for a long time for their own purposes. But the idea is the data, once collected, can be reused. Other people would be interested in using the same data for other purposes. So that's why we wanted to make sure that this data are made available to everybody. And it doesn't matter if it's a new data, if it's an old data. And if it's an old data, it's even better, because when we are trying to understand the changes in climate, we need those old records. Harmonize regional established standards to conform to national and international uniform, reliable minimum standards. Okay, so because if everybody speaks a different language, we cannot talk to each other, because everybody are on its own world. So that's why we wanted to make sure that everybody is speaking the same language. In language, in data sharing would be the same protocols. We're gonna make sure that every infrastructure and data distributing centers are talking in the same standard, same protocols, so they can collect data and distribute data in the same way, no matter where you are. And for that, we wanted to improve the capacity for research and innovation, and manage for better understanding the data needs, management, sharing, metadata, the data of the data, and communication processes. So we were worried about the whole, a very comprehensive way to look at the data problem. So for that, we proposed the creation of the All Atlantic Ocean Data Space. What is that? It's a federation of all scientific data, infrastructures, and services around the Atlantic. And so we be able to share all these resources. And this ocean data space will provide maximum online availability and accessibility of data, and contribute to wider efforts towards future ocean governance. So in this little cartoon, we have all the areas that we wanted to impact, and make sure that everybody will have access to every data that has ever been collected and will be collected to be used to be useful for everybody. So in summary, it's just democratized data. So that's why we wanted to reach by doing that. But during the process, obviously, we identify some of the bottlenecks, some of the problems. And after much discussion, and some of them are things that it become a little obvious that we have all these problems. The first one is the difference between the infrastructures in different regions, in different countries. We know that the structures that we observe in the Northern Hemisphere are much more advanced than the one that we have in the rest of the world. But that cannot be a difference that would make us to not pursue, the data space. So the idea is to make sure that we have sharing of all these infrastructures as well. The second bullet is more like related to, especially to us, the scientists, because this data component, usually in the research project, are not well defined or funded. People like to publish, but not always they submit the data open to all other people to use, to have access to the data. So we have a lack of culture of data sharing. And we can observe that during the time, maybe in the last decade, things are changing a little bit, because when we wanted to publish some research, they ask us for the data. So things are starting to change a little bit. The other thing is data are scattered. So everybody, there's lots of data in some drawer, in some hard disk that nobody's used for a long time. So we have to have access to this data. And so that thing, we are not yet using the huge potential availability from civil society and the private sphere. They've been collecting data as well. And that data could also be important for us to get to this big data space. And the last one is the lack of human capacity to assimilate all the information and to ingest and make it available to others. We have to make sure that we have very capable data scientists who can make sure that you not only you can get access to this raw data, have a nice quality control, put in the system, and make sure that you have different products that other sectors of the society would benefit from this data. So we proposed some solutions. The solutions that we defined were adoption of common formats and sharing data publicly. So the data should be available free of charge. Everybody can have access to the data, open access, and every data should have be stored, and they are in a certain format that would be the same for every data center. So then we can go to one center or the other, and it doesn't matter where you go. You can publish your data, you can retrieve data, download data from the centers, and it would be much easier if all the data were defined in the same common formats. Facilitate data sharing process. Sometimes it could be very democratic. So you have to write to the data owner to make that data available. No, we wanted to make it very simple. You go to a certain web page and click, and then something very easy for everybody to have access. There has to be some investment on data centers and shared infrastructures. Of course, even the infrastructure that already exists have to undergo some modifications to make sure that we will be able to attend to our purposes. One thing that we always talk about is we don't want to reinvent anything. We are going to use the things that are already there in place, and then after some little adaptation phase, we can try to work together. Promote best practices on data management. It's really important to make sure that there has to be some rules to how to do the data management, and invest on capacity developing in data management. So this is thing that I've been talking about, which we really need nice experts on data management. And I think this is, I talk to you directly, people who are, have access to policy making and government and funding agencies. The last thing is the long-term and sustained funding. This is the most important part that we have to have in order to make sure that this will survive for a long, long time. This is a plan that we had for the decade of the ocean, but it has to last much, much longer. So at the end of our effort, our joint pilot action, we generate this roadmap for the creation of this Atlantic Ocean data space, which started, at the end of this last year. And then the idea is to move along, but the steps that we have to follow are very, it's a very logical step in order to make sure that everybody, have access to all the data, all the infrastructure should be, capable of accepting the data. So at the end of our roadmap in 2030, there is a done here. So we have to make sure that everything is going to be working as we planned. And during the way here, we put some checkpoints to make sure that we have done the job, you know, for 2026 compilation of all national regional data, establishing a national or regional database. So this is something that we have to have in order to make sure that we have the food that, you know, the data that people are gonna have access. And meanwhile, during the road, we're trying to, you know, increase data literacy, support and foster, attract and maintain, get more people to have this knowledge that we're working towards the data space. Another check in 2028. So make sure that all these data structures and infrastructures are linked in order to, like, in 2 years, we're gonna have the final product, which is the ocean data space. So yeah, that's it. My presentation. I hope it didn't take much of my time, you know, and that's just for you to have an idea that that's something that we spend a lot of effort and discussions, and our group of people in the Work Package 5. We're not only scientists. We had data managers, we had other stakeholders, we had people from the government, we have people from the private sector. So the discussions were very thorough, and I think, you know, I can say very confidently that, you know, we tackled every point that we were supposed to do. But we can always are open for discussion. So thank you so much for the time.
Thank you, Prof, for the keynote words. And then I believe that with the proposed solutions that you have mentioned or highlighted, hopefully they will manifest, and then people will have access to data.
Yeah.
And the scientists will.
All right.
Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you.
Again. Yes, before I call Prof. Amit, just wanted to remind also people who are attending on YouTube, so that if they have questions, they can just put them right on the chat so that we can see them and then we can address. Thank you. I will now invite Prof. Amit Mishra from University of Cape Town. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Can I share my slides?
Yep.
Did you find on the bottom of the screen right next to the, okay.
Right. Is my slide visible?
Yes.
Perfect. Thanks. And of course, thanks for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and honor to speak to this forum. I just realized that I only have 10 minutes, so I shall try to compress my talk in the time limit. So let's go without further ado. The plan is to have a quick introduction about our group at the University of Cape Town and some of the activities. Then I'll talk about 3 dimensions of what we're calling SENSAI for M2, which stands for Sensors and AI for Marine Monitoring. Then, of course, we'll look a little bit about the different challenges and opportunities. Right. So what exactly is SENSAI? I prefer the term SENSAI because often when we talk about AI, we tend to forget that the actual source of data are the sensors. If the sensors are not designed together with the AI algorithms, then the efficiencies will not be optimal. So for optimal efficiency for any given application, the preferred way is co-development of both the sensor systems as well as the AI algorithms. And that is why I prefer this phrase, just SENSAI, rather than just AI or just sensors, because AI is good for things for which Google and Facebook are putting all the money, like video analytics, image processing, and language modeling. but for something different like sensor analysis to detect pollutions in oceans. These are typical applications, and they require investigation into both the sensor as well as algorithms. Of course, sustainability, it's I think it's the singular thing we all should be working towards, and luckily we have got the SDGs to guide us. And focusing on marine, it has got SDGs that are directly related to it. For example, SDG 14 and SDG 13, but also there are some SDGs which are indirectly related to marine monitoring, like zero poverty and hunger, clean water, clean energy. And of course, life on land is not independent of the life underwater. So that also indirectly depends on marine monitoring. So I like to term this whole field as Senseye for M2, highly interdisciplinary, and of course it can be either low or high TRL. Our Department of Electrical Engineering at UCT is located in the southern tip of Africa, and we have got a huge advantage based on the location. We have access to 2 oceans. South Africa is home to 2 biodiversity hotspots, and we're also quite close to Antarctica, and that lets us work closely with people who work in the study of Southern Ocean. And also, like, one of our strength is that we actually build things. We not only do the software and algorithm, we do build sensor modules and sensor systems. Some major projects that we are working on related to marine monitoring. This is one of the main ones we are working on currently with industries and universities from Malta, Turkey, Romania, and of course South Africa. We in South Africa are work package leaders in few of the work packages: sensor fusion using AI, in situ data to bolster satellite data processing algorithm. And for that, we are designing inexpensive sensor suite for in situ measurement. And one of the sensors that we are innovating from scratch is flat face stability sensor, which we expect can be used as an inexpensive way to measure microplastics. Just to give a context, microplastic measurement is extremely challenging. The sensors available in market are very, very costly. So we hope that the sensors that we are developing will be able to, help us in having something that is inexpensive and decently reliable. Because many times when you start making inexpensive systems, they also lose a little bit of reliability, right? This is one project that we have been involved and we have been working slowly because of the lack of sufficient funding and manpower, as my predecessor told Professor Olga. So ice charting is a well-known problem, especially in Southern Ocean, because the way the physics work, the way the dynamic works are quite different, because the Arctic is land body surrounded by, water body surrounded by land bodies, whereas Antarctica is land body surrounded by water bodies. Especially in the marginal ice zones or MIS, it's extremely challenging. And for example, you can see that very thin ice layers in the marginal ice zones, they are, from satellite images, they just look like thick ice. So most of the times the ice charts that are prepared using satellite images and the algorithms developed for the Arctics don't really work, and giving rise to almost 70–80% of error most of the times. We tried to do few innovations, but again, it's a work in progress. So 2 things that we tried to do differently. Number one, we tried to use synthetic aperture radar because it gives much higher resolution. And in the training of the models, almost 70–80% of the training was done by data from Arctics. And the last leg of the training was done using the sparsely available data from the Southern Ocean. So we have also developed a proper interactive tool using Python by which we can give the coordinates, and it can give the ice charts using different algorithms that we have worked on. Those who want to look at the codes and the paper, you can scan the QR code and go to the GitHub page of the student who worked on this project. Again, it's a work in progress. A lot of work needs to be done to make it actually reliable ice charting tool. Then protecting ocean economy, one of the things that really challenges countries with large coastline like South Africa, Brazil, or Mauritius, or many African countries, is piracy and poaching of fish. And that mostly happens using small boats. Detection of small boats is extremely difficult because most of the times they come during night time. So your visual, like optical cameras, are useless. You can rely on radars, but radars from seawater get a lot of heavy sea clutter. So what we are also trying to develop for the last few years with collaborators from TU Delft, UCL London, and ONR in the States is to develop the multi-static radar system. With multi-static radar, the sea clutter noise is reduced quite drastically, which enables us to detect small boats. So as I was saying, we build things. So this is a radar we have built from scratch. And you can see this is the Navy's base in Simonstown, where we do most of our measurement. And in terms of robotics for ocean economy, we have also been working with an SME from India, which makes robots for aeration for shrimp farming, which mostly happens in coastal regions. Okay, now coming to the main topic of this topic. There are two stages when we are looking at the application of AI in marine monitoring. So if you look at the literature from the last 5-6 years, from the time people have started applying the new deep learning algorithms for marine monitoring, you can distinctly see two stages. Number one, people have used available data, dumped it into the AI models, and have got quite interesting results, because AI models are famous for being able to work without a lot of domain knowledge. So we have got very encouraging results. That kind of beginner's luck, and then people hit the brick wall. So then people try to push the boundaries and to get better and more magical performances, but that never actually works. And there are many reasons why it doesn't work. Number one is we never have enough sensors. And even when we have a lot of sensors, more sensor is not necessarily always a better thing. With every sensor, we also start adding noise. So more sensor means better is kind of a myth. And then people tell this a lot, like, data is the new oil, data is the new oil. That is nonsense. Data itself is useless. It's the information in the data that is the oil. Hence, in any processing, starting from selection of sensors, to placement of sensor, to edge processing, to the AI algorithm design, we have to keep information as the guiding thing. So that is why we are focusing a lot in our group on information theory-based processing, like information theory-based filtering, information theory-based fusion, so that we never lose sight of the actual thing that is crucial. It's the information in the data and not the data itself. So from that, I try to tell, like, we have got 3 dimensions of Senseye for marine monitoring. We have got the sensors, we have got the AI algorithms. We also have historical knowledge, because marine monitoring is not new. It has been happening for decades. So there are lots of physics, well understood models that are already existing. We cannot and should not discard them all. So these 3 dimensions of marine monitoring using AI have to be respected and taken care of. So when we're trying to develop sensors, so again, we have to design sensors to collect information, not just data. Hence, placement of sensor is extremely important. So one of my PhD student, he is now working on the optimal placement of sensors to collect marine data. Because if we can get that, we not only save on the number of sensors that we use, we also get better data, i.e., we get better signal to noise ratio. And secondly, calibration. Sensors, especially inexpensive sensors, are infamous for giving not so reliable data. Hence, they require calibration. Calibration of sensors installed remotely is extremely difficult. Hence, we need innovations in the domain of blind calibration, i.e., how can we calibrate the sensor without taking a golden standard near it. Last year, we filed a patent on the use of applications, AI-based methods for blind calibration. We are also working on that. In AI algorithm development, again, the focus has to be to extract information. And in that, we have to follow, it's nice to follow the old engineering thumb rule called KISS, keep it simple and stupid. The simpler the model, most of the times, the better and more reliable the model is. And lastly, historic knowledge. So historic knowledge to understand what is information. Because information depends on the application. So historic knowledge will help us to understand what is information. It will tell us a lot about what priors we already have, which we can use in making the performance of machine learning algorithms better, and how to best design architectures which are inspired by the physics that we already know. And it's a completely new area coming up called physics-informed machine learning. But there the physics is a bit misnomer, because it's not just physics, it's any historic scientific knowledge that we have got about the domain. Of course, there are many dimensions of opportunities and challenges. So even though there are only 3 dimensions in designing a project using Senseye for marine monitoring, there are multiple dimensions and opportunities. First of all, remote sensing. We have been using remote sense data, like the classic satellites that we have been using are Sentinels and JSONs and RadarSats. But also, luckily, there are lots of new satellites being launched, being planned. For example, NASA launched a JPSS-2 just a week back. China started launching the first of its series of satellites that it wants to launch to monitor the water bodies and oceans. And remote sensing doesn't only involve satellites. It has got multiple levels. It has got in situ data collection. We have got drones. We have got satellites. Drones have got high spatial resolution, so the data they collect are of better resolution, but low temporal resolution, which is you can't really fly or carry out a drone expedition all the time. Satellites, low spatial resolution, but high temporal resolution. How do we combine these 2 data together? So we are working in one of the projects, we are working on information theory-based fusion algorithms to fuse drone and satellite data. So in situ data collection is a big problem, is a big challenge. Sensors, as we discussed, have got 2 main challenges, calibration and placement. And there is another big problem for the global south, that is cost. We always have got less funding than what we would like to have. And the sensors that we mostly import are really, really costly. Hence, inexpensive sensor suite design is one of the things that we have been working on. And we think that we should have a global platform to work on designing modular, robust sensor suites and make them all open source. Classic example is Casper initiative from radio astronomy, where they have developed open source hardware, open source software, so that anyone can build a radio astronomy telescope. Of course, not the best quality, but at least the basics are out there. If that can happen, we can enable citizen science. And Prof. Olga told about citizen science as well. That's a very crucial part of doing any kind of big observational science. And when we have got data from multiple groups and multiple citizen science groups and research groups, as Prof. Olga told, a big headache is how do we archive and process and keep the data and make the data usable. A good concept I can put forward here is Ocean Data Observatory. So Ocean Data Observatory is an archive which should be able to store the information, store the data in such a way that any citizen scientist should be able to take the data and train machine learning algorithms, because data ultimately have to be used to train machine learning algorithms so that to get some insights. To facilitate that, we have to make sure that the data is stored in that kind of format that is usable and that is best exploitable by machine learning scientists. Hence, there's two major multinational big science projects we can think of. One is how do we design inexpensive sensor suites which can be made open source? And secondly, how can we think of a sustainable ocean data observatory which can be used to store data to facilitate the science and development? And the catchword is sustainable, because if we only rely on public funding, only rely on government funding, these things will only work piecewise, because there is, as Professor Olga told, sustained funding of this kind of initiatives is very important, but that's not always guaranteed. So we have to think of ways to make these things generate revenue. If our ocean data observatory can generate revenue as well, then automatically it will become a sustainable project. But if you always depend on government funding, this kind of big science initiatives, especially around data, can never be self-sustained. And we should not forget that data, as we discussed, is the new oil. Actual thing, information is the new oil. If it is the oil, why should we not use that oil to generate enough money, not too much money, enough money to just make the project sustainable? That brings me to the last part, ocean economy. I heard this statement from a Swedish capitalist. We were told that responsible capitalism is the only way to have sustainable development. Unless we have got revenue plans, no initiative, research or otherwise, can become sustainable. So financial aspects are equally important. We have to think and foster new ways to use ocean to create profit along with prosperity. Not just profit, but profit along with prosperity. Some quick examples, ocean energy. So that's a nice way to create the money from ocean. Seaweed-based food, both for humans and animals. And I saw this one from a startup in Sweden. So Sweden imports a lot of prawns from countries like Vietnam and India. And prawns which are shipped from these far off places, they carry a lot of carbon footprint. So now this startup is working on innovative ways to cultivate these equatorial prawns in Swedish waters. And if that works, that is going to create economy as well as reduce carbon footprint. So yeah, let me skip this one and come to the last slide. Thanks everyone. And if there are any questions, either from the audience or in YouTube, we can take quickly if there is some time. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Amit, for the Sensei presentation. That was very interesting. And I couldn't help myself when I see the ice charting using IL and the polar. In my mind, that just come the polar bears, and I'm thinking the sensors are able to detect them. Thank you. And then now, yes, we'll open the question from the YouTube or even here. If anybody have questions for our two keynote speakers, we'll include them. Thank you. Roberto, you will assist me if there are any questions from YouTube or if there are any hands.
Thank you for mentioning. We don't have a question from YouTube, but I see a hand from Dr. Ronald Bus from INPE. Ronald, please.
Good morning and good evening to everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. I just have a very quick question to Dr. Olga Sato about the data sharing facilities that we are talking about. Are you actually planning to have several facilities, each one in each country, or just a central one like we already had in Azores, for instance? What do you think?
Well, we talked about that, and the idea is centralized is a good thing, because then since the idea is to share the infrastructures, it would be a way to go. But I think we have to try to develop this, make sure that the infrastructure that we have already, like in Brazil, South Africa and other countries, so they have to be like hubs that you can access to them. So I think that's how we're going to go and make sure that we have more like a distributed kind of centers. But the idea, since we have to have the same protocols, it's basically we're not going to have a problem with that. And also, especially people, who's going to run all the protocols and try to maintain the data. So I think the idea to have it more like a distributed kind of data centers are more reasonable. Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, thank you. So I think we can move. I thank our presenters, and then we will have now just a very short 5 minutes break so that we can refill our coffees or tea in case of South Africa, and we will be back in 5 minutes time. Welcome back to the continuation of our event. We now have a first panel on artificial intelligence. This first panel will have 2 presentations, followed by some initial comments, then we'll open for questions. We first will have presentations from Dr. Laike Dujoto-Chuang, I hope I pronounce his name correctly, from the Southern Ocean Carbon and Climate Observatory, which is a program from the South African Council for Scientific and Industrial Research. Then we'll have a presentation from Professor Guilherme Longo from the University of the Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte, UFRN. And then we'll have a round of questions that will be started by our commentator, Dr. Ronald Bus from the National Institute of Aerospatial Research, INPE. Okay, so to begin our session, and remember you can post your questions in the chat in YouTube and we'll convey them to our presenters and our commentator. So to start with his presentation, I ask Dr. Laike Dujoto-Chuang to start his presentation. Laike, can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes. And now we can see you too.
Okay.
You're now presenter. You should find the presentation button at the bottom of the screen, just next to the webcam button.
Okay. I don't know which screen I'm in right now. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Is it full screen now?
Yes, it is full screen. You can start.
Okay.
And with a nice animation too, working.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. First of all, thank you to the
We lost
community.
your presentation for a second, for now. Okay, it's back. Okay.
Oh. Yeah. Is it fine now? The first.
We can see it now. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes. Actually, my presentation today will be mostly about the work SOCO have been doing, the Southern Ocean Carbon and Climate Observatory, in terms of using AI and machine learning in ocean carbonate system and climate. Yeah, basically, the ocean around the Antarctica are of central importance for global climate, and it's one of the major area, the main key of study area for SOCO. Yeah, the Southern Ocean geographically defined as the ocean connecting the 3 major oceans in the world and located south of 30 degrees. Yeah. I've been shown that the global ocean absorb about 23% of human-generated carbon dioxide emission and about 90% of accumulated heat in the air system. And the Southern Ocean, as I early defined, account for about 50% of this global CO2 uptake and about 75% of excess heat. Now, moving further, is remain of high uncertainty in that region, called in mitigating climate change and in global climate projection. Yes, so mainly, as we can see here, this is one of the results shown by Health System state-of-the-art health system model, the well-known CMI P6, that have large bias and uncertainty. As you can see on the figure at the top right, we will see here, this is actually one of the results shown by our colleague here a few years ago, where the model is lacking in reconstructing the seasonal cycle, for instance, in the subantarctic zone, which is the southern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Yeah, about the observation, the same area you can see here is actually the global map of the ship track, which is the major way of observing the partial, to sample the surface ocean PCO2. And here we can see the representation of the center of the ship in the region, where you can see in blue most of the ship track during summertime, and in red the ship track during winter time. You can see during winter there are very few observations in the area, so the measurement is really biased to summer. Now, understanding and observing the prediction of the ocean oil, the future is become really challenging. As you could see here, due to the reason I described earlier, there's some disagreement between model output and observation, as you can see here, especially when it comes to the Southern Ocean or the Southern Hemisphere, particularly the Southern Ocean. Yeah, this is actually the resolution that's give most of the resolution the global health system model actually are simulated, and most of the resolution we have regionally cost 25 kilometer, and we go further, it defines a resolution of 8 kilometer, where we can see how more we increase the spatial resolution, we will be able to observe more features. And the finest resolution is at 2.5 kilometer, which is one of the targets of our research. But we could see here that because the SSM model, the same find is mostly the cost of courses resolution, you will observe that there are key processes that are not being resolved in the S-system model. Now, the question we ask ourselves is the model that are wrong or the observation? So SOCO have been using machine learning to try to address this issue in 3 key ways: improve the existing parameterization on no represented process in cost resolution S-system model. That's one way. Second way, generate a reconstruction of CO2 flux using machine learning and gut feeling approach based on cause observation from ship, which we have been doing like successfully and contribute to global carbon budget, policy making, and IPCC through the product developed in 2019 called CSIR-MSC. The third point, which I will be focusing on, is using what we call OSSE to optimize how to optimize our resource to sample in the most efficient way in order to reduce bias in observation and subsequently improve the uncertainty in the reconstruction. Now, most of this machine learning algorithm we have been using the scope of application in ocean science, as described on this slide. Yeah, but for the sake of time, I think I will skip a little bit. If you have a question later, we will still come back and we discuss. Yeah, so the product I just described earlier try to cover most of these key algorithms, spanning from unsupervised learning to supervised learning. Now, the product, CSIMS6, I mentioned earlier, is work a little bit this way. We first have observation of surface ocean CO2 that only exists globally on ships, like we can see on this particular this first video, the arrow show here. We take it as a target and combine it and feed it with other data such as surface sea surface temperature, mixed layer depth, chlorophyll, and more other features, which most of the time come either from observation from satellite and reanalysis, and try to constrain them or train the model with it based on the ship track, and then construct or fill the gap of where the ship couldn't observe the data. So, and then be able to reconstruct the global SCCO2 flux, as we could see on this map, where the red actually was the outgassing of the ocean, and the blue line represent the uptake of CO2 from atmosphere. And we could see how we come back on the statement we made earlier that the global ocean absorbs about 23% CO2, and you see the Southern Ocean part that is high concentration in blue, as I described, absorb more of CO2 from the atmosphere. Moving further, we see like resolving time-scale dynamic for improving improving our understanding of global carbon and climate is a key or central to most of our research. As I showed a little bit earlier, this is one of the contribution or one of the efforts have been done by our group, SOCO, to try to like deploy autonomous robots such as glider in the Southern Ocean in order to fill the gap, as you can see from the gap of observation we have from ship, in order to, especially during winter, or using prognostic model to just run some high resolution model within the Southern Ocean. And this is what we have been able to, the higher resolution covering the entire Southern Ocean we have been able to do is, so far, it's 8 kilometers. Now, about the OSCE I mentioned earlier, the approach is actually just a way observing system simulation experiment that consists of using either a series of experiments that consists of using something called Naturon, as described the procedure on the diagram at the right, in order to design key questions to address whether the accuracy of the accuracy of the platform we use, the frequency, the spatial resolution, and the supplementary observation it is, and which metric we can use to make sure that in order to assess the way the platform will be able to sample. It's an approach that is actually has been used by most of the organizations like NASA in the United States in order to deploy the satellite in the space. Yes, so since the OOC cannot evaluate by observation which do not exist, for instance, it's also focused most of the time from historical observation or observation related to the property we are trying to investigate, or use model data. Now, that is actually what I have been doing during my PhD, I would say, by combining the OSCE approach to design an ocean observing network, and then combine it with machine learning, as we should see here, by simulating the platform in the ocean using model data, and then we simulate the different space and time resolution that the platform can sample, and then assess them in order to see if we are deploying most of this platform in the ocean in the right way. One of the results we got was published last year, and we access through the name here. The second approach of the OSCE, combining with machine learning as well, is to test an approach or one of the the technique, which one is better, and we came to actually understand that having several approaches is good, and taking the ensemble of it seems to be more robust, as it helps to mitigate the uncertainty from the individual approach. Yeah, and the third approach we have been looking into is to like see how we can use it to redefine or propose to design a new network, observation network, using platform autonomous sample vehicles such as sail drone, wave glider in the ocean. However, we found that actually sampling meridionally, mean from north to south or south to north, is actually help to reduce bias in reconstruction than sampling actually by following the water current or zonally, as seen on this last graph. Yeah. So far, this is one of the key skill and tools we have been using in the system science ecosystem, which most of the data users in the group probably will be familiar with. Different environment. I try to skip this a little bit to move to the next slide. Yeah, this is actually a growing list of major competing tools that we have been using in SOCO science. This is just a few of them, but as interest grow, also the number of tools increase and collaboration as well. So in summary, what machine learning is really essential in ocean science for several compelling reasons. So data complexity as one of the points. We have the ocean science is one of the fields with very complex data spanning from space and time. To improve prediction, as we mentioned earlier with the CSR ML6, and also data fusion is other like technique to enable the fusion of data coming from different sources, or also increase or improve interdisciplinary research. Because with that approach, it's machine learning, we allow people or allow research in a more interdisciplinary collaborative way between oceanographer, computer science, and data science or data analyst, and so on. Yet with this synergy, leads to innovative solutions and novel insights into ocean science. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Laik. We will now move to the second presentations, and then we will have the rounds of questions and comments together for the two presentations. So now I'd like to invite Professor Guilherme Longo from Federal University of Rio Grande do Norte for his presentation.
Thank you, Roberto, for the introduction. If you can enable my presentation here. I'm sorry, I'm getting there.
And just to remind those following us on YouTube, you can post your questions on the chat and we'll bring them here. Thank you.
Okay, can you confirm it if you're seeing it and it's okay?
Yeah, it's okay, full screen. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Let's see if it's gonna go through. Okay, so good morning, everyone. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and share a little bit of our work. So I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, but I think I'm a user, and I'm trying to actually bridge fields, different fields, to actually solve some problems in ocean sciences. So I'm very glad to be here swimming among all of big names and people that actually know a lot about the area. So I'm going to talk more specifically about a recent work we conducted here in our lab. So we're trying to bridge people and technology to optimize coral monitoring. So just to give you a perspective, as I said, we are a marine ecology lab. We're not an artificial intelligence lab, but we like to build bridges among areas. Just so you know, we are located right on the corner of Brazil here in Natal, in Northeast Brazil. It's a very nice tropical place that I recommend you to visit sometime. We have some nice sand dunes, vegetation, and also very, very nice reefs that we study a lot here. So the work we do in our lab is it's very diverse. It goes from field assessments to field experiments to lab experiments to 3D models and citizen science. So we are very enthusiastic to ocean sciences. And we study reefs because reefs are the tropical forests of the oceans. So just to give you a context, so when you look at a reef or when you look at forests, you're actually looking at very, very similar ecosystems in different realms. And if you understand that trees are actually the basis of the forest, you can also understand that corals are often the basis for the reef. So if you wipe out corals, it's just the same thing that would happen if you wipe out all the trees. And we all know, and we all are aware that we are facing the Anthropocene, so we have multiple impacts on the oceans. I'm not going to be talking a lot about that, but it's just to actually set what the problem is. So the problem is related to all these impacts, and then why involving people and technology to actually solve these impacts. So these images you're about to see here are actually reef in Brazil, in Northeast Brazil, really close to here. So Brazil also have large reef formations, and those were the natural colors, and these are the colors that they get when a heat wave comes. So when the water warms too much, instead of seeing colorful seascapes like this, you see these sort of ghost reefs with every coral bleached and losing a lot of diversity, and more specifically, a lot of the benefits that these ecosystems provide to us, like tourism and fisheries. And this happens because corals get stressed and they just release this microalgae they have an association with. So these occurs like at very large spatial scale. So when we think of Brazil, we have reefs from the Amazon mouth here up here to the south in Santa Catarina. So it's over 8,000 kilometers of coast. So how can we optimize coral monitoring and actually get to know if these coral bleaching events, if these large impact events are really happening at these scales and in a timely manner? This is the problem that we posed. And with time, we concluded that citizen science can be a key to do that. So we're based on the Thousand Eyes hypothesis. So if you're not familiar with the citizen science, it's just people without previous scientific training actually contributing and engaging in science, knowing why they're doing that. So the Thousand Eye hypothesis is just why we are here talking about AI and ocean sciences. People are actually in the water, seeing corals, seeing fish, and all the diversity. So if we get more people engaged and get them to share what they see, we get more data, we get larger spatial scale, we cover large spatial scale, and we also have a more time-effective response. For example, if we have an oil disaster or if we have a heat wave coming in. So with that in mind, we came up a couple of years ago with this program, which is in Portuguese is De Olho nos Corais. So it's basically keeping your eyes on the corals. And it's a very basic thing. We just want people to share their experiences with corals in social media. And when I say experience, I mean, take a coral picture and use our hashtag on social media. We're going to get access to that. And this is actually really valuable data. because then I can actually be here in Natal and I'm looking at a coral, how a coral looked like in Rio or somewhere much further where we need more resource and time to get access to it. So this was the basic idea. We are now pretty strong on Instagram. So if you don't know us yet, please take time to take a look on our profile. And as we started these campaigns, we started to feed people with information about corals, and they started to engage and started to send pictures like this one you're just seeing here at a remote oceanic island in Brazil. So with time, people started sharing a lot of coral pictures, and as you can see, they're very pretty pictures actually, and very diverse in color, shape, time scales as well, but geographic scales. So it was really interesting to see that we could engage people in actually caring about corals and caring about ecosystems. And while we did that, we started to get coral data coming in, right? So people started actually sharing their pictures of corals all over Brazil, as you can see from here to the south. And this is like results from a couple of months only. So what we did with these pictures that we actually would go through, a lot of students in my lab would go in on Instagram, get these pictures and actually identify the coral and do the health assessment to see if it was bleached or had any disease. And as time passes, we had a lot of pictures to go through. So we thought we really need to optimize this. We're losing a lot of good information because we can't, keep up with doing that manually. So we thought, can we actually automate that, and can we use AI to do that? So basically, we needed to optimize this process. So that's the problem we brought to people from the computer science. So the answer for us was in teaming up. So I'm going to focus a little bit on this paper that we just published this year, a couple weeks ago. And so I was fortunate to have colleagues at the Federal University of Paraná, which is a university in south of Brazil, that were from computer sciences and actually hunting for good problems to solve. So we talked a little bit about this, and they said, well, we can probably do something interesting for you to save time, and we can actually get more monitoring done. So in this paper, what we did is that we recovered all these pictures that people would post on social medias, and they came with a lot of challenges because some of them had text, some of them had low light conditions, some of them were not even corals, were just people, taking pictures during their vacation. And then we can make a difference together because they do know about AI, but our team here were able to actually get every picture on the database and actually do what they call segmentation. So we could circle in the picture what was a coral and what was not, and actually teach the computer to do a better identification of a coral. We could actually classify that whatever was a coral was not a coral, which kind of coral was it, so at the species level. So together we could make a difference. So as a result, we had a data set with over 7 million labeled pixels, which is almost 6 times higher than similar data sets that did that worldwide. So that's why I keep repeating that the key is actually to build bridges with other people and actually combine expertises. And it turns out it worked out pretty well for our initial efforts. So basically what we did, this is just an example. I don't want you to lose a lot of time looking at the table, but if we feed the computer with these pictures and test several models that use actually convolutional neural works to do that, one of the models performed really well and it varied from species to species, of course, because we had some species that are very similar, others we don't have a lot of data on, so we still have a lot of room to improve, but we could identify some species with almost like 100% confidence. So that was a pretty good result. So there's still room for improvement, changing the models and actually connecting this better, but I want to focus on the potential that this have, because we're actually getting data from, costless, we're getting people engaged in science and in scientific questions, and actually it opens a wide array of opportunities actually that we want to explore in the next few years to connect more people and to engage more people. So basically today, if people take a picture of a coral, use the hashtag, we still have to manually upload this to the computer and then get this identified. So we actually want to streamline this in a way that if you post a picture on Instagram and use this hashtag, this could go through the computer would message you right away saying, thanks for sharing your picture. You just saw these coral species in this area. We're very glad you're part of the monitoring team. And, and this can be this can grow spatially, it can grow also in other opportunities to share information, to receive information from the public. So this is basically connecting and engaging people through technology. So the question that I wanted to finish my presentation with is bridging people and technology a crucial aspect of avoiding coral demise? It may be that we need people engaged in understanding that these are important ecosystems, and then we have something to do with this demise, and being part of a monitoring program, and everybody's curious about technology and want to do that, want to have that in their lives. So this may be a critical aspect to actually get people involved in avoiding coral demise. So I would like to thank all the supporters here in my university, my colleagues at the Federal University of Paraná, the funders of these studies, a lot of people in my lab that actually worked actively on this project and on keeping the social medias up and running. I would also like to thank Gabriel Martinelli for critical help. And these are my contacts in case you want to talk a little bit more about these matters. Thanks for the time.
Thank you, Guilherme. Now I give the floor to Dr. Ronald Bus, who will be our commentator and have some questions for the presenters. Thank you.
Are you hearing me? Thanks so much. Congratulations for both Laik and Guilherme for the great presentations. I was really impressed. My first impression on comparing those two presentations is that we are dealing with digital technology to address very different aspects of environmental sciences, in this case, ocean sciences, in different scales, both temporally and especially as well. In the case of the last presentation, we see a very interesting problem that is linked to global to environmental changes that happens along the Brazilian coast, for instance, causing coral bleaching. But I can also see that you have perhaps applications for other fields like pollution, especially oil pollution and plastic pollution, perhaps. And in this case, in the case of Laik, I see that we are dealing with a global problems that is the air-sea fluxes of CO2. He was focusing in the Southern Ocean, but for sure, this approach of combining computing, modeling, and artificial intelligence is useful for any other place and variable. He said that he can use it for ocean currents and sea surface temperature, for instance. My major point is that, first of all, my impression is that you came first from a good science question, and then you use the technology to approach and have better answers to that. In the case of Guilherme, he is also having non-scientific community in the program, which is very nice because you can reach other places that you cannot do in the field with your own lab. And in the case of Laik, he said it's having a very nice use of this technology to solve problems like the lack of observations, both special in spatial frame, but also time frame. For instance, the lack of observations during winter in the Southern Ocean. So I think it's pretty clear that both temporal and spatial resolutions can be improved using these technologies for many applications. And the applications are not only related to environmental change, but can be related to lack of observations itself. So I would like you, perhaps Dr. Laik first, to talk about a little better about these issues. How can you profit from this digital intelligence to actually make a better prediction of CO2 fluxes in your case, comparing to normal approaches like numerical modeling? This is one thing. And in the case of Guilherme, it's a good thing that you can actually see that the coral is bleaching, that you can talk about coral reefs health. But can you see that you can use the same approach to marine pollution, for instance, both for, plastic and oil spills, for instance, that can be very, very, very useful for society as a whole. So I think this is my first approach on questioning you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald. Thank you. Should I go first? Oh.
Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. That's really a great question, and actually a challenging question. Like most of the research in the carbon cycle community actually try to address is a big challenge. Yes, in order to, like I mentioned a bit earlier, something probably I didn't bring up is also that most of these observations are limited just between the past 4 decades. So we can't really even track back, further than that, especially the sea surface ocean CO2, which is actually the data the measurement we are interested in, because it has a lot to do with more sea surface CO2 in the surface ocean, of course, will also give us an indication of how much the ocean is also taking from the atmosphere, which is what we are releasing to the atmosphere, and also how much the ocean, depending on the transition, also release to the atmosphere based on natural process. Yeah, actually, like I say, for the past, just like in recent decade, I would say probably back in 2000, maybe 2 decades from back from now, that we actually be able to supplement back then we only have ship to observe this data at the surface ocean. That is why you will see on the track I actually mentioned, you see some area where there haven't been any observation at all, because we could just rely on the commercial ship or some research crews, which are done seasonally, here to have data in those places in the ocean. And also, given the condition of some area of the ocean, like the Southern Ocean during winter, the ship can't really navigate because of storm and many other natural phenomena. Yeah, so given that, in that particular variable, like the surface ocean CO2, can be observed with more accuracy using satellite for the case of the sea surface temperature. Yeah, it can use satellite is more difficult, especially for some remote area like the Southern Ocean due to clouds coverage. Yeah, and so on. Yeah, so and the idea of machine learning, to go back to your question, how is it better compared to most of the traditional model that was initially used? One of the points was because of this. Most of these data are highly variable in time and space. Yes, something that most of the traditional approach, like linear regression, for instance, is not really good in handling that. Yes, so the idea of machine learning was actually coming to propose like a sort of 2-step, where the first step is try to cluster the ocean, like create a group of part of the ocean where some area some variable behave in a similar way, and then do the reconstruction in those. The reconstruction is just a way to say the model tries to learn from the past or from the observation that have been done, and use that information to try to predict or reconstruct fill the gap where the ship were not able to sample. Yeah, that's one of the advantage of the machine learning approach. So it can retain that information and guide us into what we fit into it to learn where we couldn't do the observation. Yeah, now coming into using it with model and observing system simulation experiment I mentioned earlier, we approach that based on the fact, just most of the time we don't question how sure are we that satellite are making accurate observation? How do scientists know that maybe the satellite will be reached? We can't deploy a satellite, do the observation and take it down, and that cost, I don't think we even have a technology to do that and deploy it again. So they have been using this approach called observing system simulation experiment, where they create an environment similar to what we try to observe, and then design different sampling approach to test what we are planning to observe in order to reduce, to improve the accuracy of the future observation. Yes, so it's the same approach. We say, okay, if we don't have some place in the ocean where ships can go, we can't just deploy autonomous vehicle there to just do the observation. How can we do it in the data way such that the observation we are having, we have a certain confidence that is a bit accurate? Yes, so that was the idea, and we borrowing that idea from most of the satellite industry and applied it here with machine learning. It's like we sample in time and space where in real life we are not able to sample, and then test it and say, okay, if you are to design a robot to deploy it in the ocean, how do we do it in a better way? That is where one of our findings was that sampling following the water current is not as accurate as sampling by passing through, by cutting the current in from north to south. Yes, so basically those are among other most of the use case where we can, this approach can really help not only to improve in the observation, but improve in designing the platform and deploying them, and also improve or reduce the uncertainty on what the machine learning is reconstruction, because there's also some uncertainty in the result we are having. It's not like 100% perfect, but at least we know that the bias is actually small. Yeah, I hope that. Yeah.
Great, thanks so much. Perhaps Guilherme can give us a word.
Sure. Thanks for the question. Yes, absolutely. You can have additional uses rather than coral bleaching only. And I don't know if our colleagues in South Africa are aware, but we had a big oil spill disaster in 2019 along the northeast coast of Brazil mainly. And that was a time where we actually did a specific campaign asking for people are you seeing oil right next to your house or your beach or whatever and we got really, really fast response. So it did not use AI at that time because we didn't have this idea yet, but I'm sure this could be useful for this matter. We could also use, I think we could do specific campaigns because we already have a network of engaged people. So if we wanted to look at plastic, or if you want to look at spills, or this could be very useful. We are still developing, but we also worked a little bit on videos to detect fish and actually identify fish as well. So this could be useful for not only for biodiversity monitoring, but also for fisheries monitoring at some level. If you just have pictures of whatever people catch, you can move. So I think that's why I try to say in my presentation that there are more opportunities than hands to work right now, I guess. So I'll be very glad to go further into these methods and actually build these bridges.
Thanks so much, Guilherme. I was going perhaps later on, but we perhaps can talk about the facilities you have for doing the job in terms of computing support you have. Apparently, you have small machines there, desktops perhaps, Guilherme, and our friend Laik, perhaps a bit richer, have high performance computing facilities in his project. So it's a huge difference, and also differences in applications as well. But we can perhaps go back to that later. I will open up for the audience to do questions if they want, perhaps before I proceed. Does someone want to make some questions? Nope. So how do you do your job literally there in your lab, Guilherme? Are you using desktops or cluster machines or something like that? Are you expecting to expand the computing facilities? Do you think it can be something that will add performance to your studies if you have better computing facilities?
Yes, absolutely. Right now, we actually outsource this processing to our colleagues at the Federal University of Paraná. We do have like what they call like a supercomputer at the university here, but because they're dealing with the models there, we're just like basically sending pictures, so it's not like intensive, computationally intensive, so that's being okay. But we're expanding a little bit. But there's I have a collaboration with a researcher in France, and we're starting to use ROV, so remote operated vehicles, to do this monitoring in several places here. And this will actually generate a lot of images, and then we're going to need some more computational power here. So it will be helpful. Right now we outsource that, but it will be helpful to have it in-house.
Thanks. Luciano, do you want to make a question?
Yes, thank you very much, Ronald. It's very quick. Good morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Laik, and thanks, Guilherme, for the brilliant talks that you gave to us. It's a very specific and quick question to Laik. In the same line that Ronald asked Guilherme, in your lab or in your network lab, are you planning also to run Earth system models to do this CO2, let's say, refinement with AI, or just take somebody else's output and work on that? Thank you.
Thank you, Luciano, for your question. Yeah, actually, I'll say that your question can be answered probably in two ways. The first way is when the observation, we are just dealing with observation. And the second way is the part of the experiment, for instance, like what I did in my PhD. Yeah, in the first way, concerning the observation node case, we are not dealing here with model. We are dealing actually with real observation, which come from the so-called SOCAT data, the Surface Ocean Carbon Dioxide Atlas. It's one of the world's largest international collaboration here from different research vessels that travel around the world to collect data. They release it every year. So that's likely the major source of surface ocean CO2 observation. And then we get other observation from satellites or from reanalysis data, for instance. And those are part of observation. And for that particular case, dealing with the global ocean, we clearly here we can process it on a local computer. I would say 100%, I would say more than 100% relied on the high performance computing, where I'm actually based currently. mistaken. It is the Center of High Performance Computing in South Africa. Yes, so for the second part, related to whether we're trying to run an S-system model, if we are to like doing the experiment globally, that is definitely we will need an S-system model output, CMI P6 output. But for this case, given that we early mentioned about the interest in fine resolution, it's been a much higher resolution, higher than the S-system model of 100 kilometers, which actually the observation actually graded at 100 kilometers. We don't have observation at a larger scale, higher than 100 kilometers. But in model, we can be able to like simulate regionally a much higher, like constrain an S-system model regionally and simulate it at a much higher resolution, which is the case of the model we've been developing here. One of my colleagues, which I think she's in the audience here, she's actually in charge of like developing a regional model at a much higher resolution so that we could, because if we are trying to simulate the way the glider, for instance, the glider sample at a very high resolution in time and space. Yes, so we need a model that is close to that resolution in order to simulate the way it's actually sampled in a real life. Yes, so we have a colleague which like run this high resolution model for the experiment we are to use, and that requires a lot of computing. That sometimes we can have work get queue for more than a week just to wait for the computing power to be allocated to us in order to run those such experiments. So, and when we run sometimes it can even take like 4 days to get the output. The output is basically answer your question.
Thanks, thanks so much. I would perhaps engage Olga in this discussion, Olga, because we've been talking previously about the data sharing, and you just had a very nice presentation to give to us beforehand. I remember when we were discussing in Atlantis about data sharing, we talked about the issue of different data sets, for instance, biological sonography, fisheries, coastal issues, and also differences between deep ocean data and coastal ocean data. You see in this presentation that we just had seen here, and the use of these technologies to improve the quality and the resolution of the data. What can you say to us about that, and how can we perhaps think about sharing this data to the community with all these, let's say, developments that we are still seeing in the community?
Yeah, nice question, Ronald. I think it's a field that it has a lot to contribute to what we already have. Sure, I think this kind of data, we are looking for any kind of data. Okay, most of all, when I talk about we have the scientific data, and I still feel that there's a layer between us and the whole the society at large. There's some layers missing that it should be, those interpreters, people who are going to transform our dull data, the things that we collect for our scientific purposes. But you have to make it this, something that it's useful for the society. And like meteorology, this is a very concrete thing, right? You go there and measure, see air temperature, pressure, humidity, wind, and then you provide to the public. Okay, it's gonna rain, it's gonna be cold, you have to bring your umbrella, you have to bring your coat, so there is a translation of the scientific data to something that everybody can understand and benefit. So so I think it's important to have this layer, you know, this, I don't know what they call it, but it has to be some very smart people. They should be very smart, because then you have to transform this, you know, data into something useful for everybody. And I see a huge possibility that, you know, other, you know, like machine learning and artificial intelligence, that you can try to see some of these connections and, you know, make, you know, something that you can use like that. Okay, so let's not say that, you know, artificial intelligence is not, we are hoping too much for that, but you have to have people who are already prepared, you know, are thinking about these kind of things, and then you can go there and program, and you have the data, you program, and then you can provide this new kind of information. I think there's a lot of possibilities, and for sure, if we have the infrastructures, we have the protocols and stuff, definitely this kind of information should be made available to everybody. So I think we are working on something really nice. You know, there's a transformation coming, and I think it's going to be really great.
Thank you so much, Olga. I think we're actually late on time. I will return the word to Roberto Di Pino. And I don't know if he's going to give us some extra time or just step up to the new other panel.
If you have any more comments and questions, we can adjust. We are adjusting on the program because the discussions has been very interesting. So if you have if you want to have another round of questions, we can accommodate before moving to the next panel. Thank you.
Well, if I can do a quick comment. I think, Olga, that you touched on a very important point in your presentation about this, let's say, bottlenecks of sharing data. I see that clearly we have two problems. One is the infrastructure, you know, to share the data. And the second, of course, the culture, you know, of the scientists on sharing its data. But I think that both come together, you know, the solution. Let's say if we have a good infrastructure, we will create the culture on the, let's say, on the community, on the scientific community to share the data. Sometimes we want to share, but we don't have how to share, you know. And the data ends up in the hard disk in our office, you know. And I think that's a very important discussion. And I think that we should find a solution. But I think that the main problem comes from the infrastructure, you know, good infrastructure to share the data. You know, at this point, we can go back to that question. The best way is to have, let's say, a unified infrastructure, or each country or each region has its own structure to share. You know, it's very difficult. We had a good discussion about it on SOOS, Southern Ocean Observing System Symposium, where they try to connect the community, you know, sharing the data. But they, let's say, they are providing you know, the ways to share the metadata and not the data itself. You need to put your data somewhere, and they will help you to let's say, advert or broadcast or share your data. So this it's a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Just to comment a little bit on what you said, it's important. It's good that we are discussing this at many levels. So it has to come, you know, for the government level, has to come with the universities, institutions, the researchers, the society and stuff, because, and especially at international levels, because we can talk about this and it's going to be another attempt to make data distributions. Many tried, and, you know, it's everything goes back to what we already have, you know, individual data centers distributing their own data. And that's not what we want. We want to have something that has to be like a unified, something common that everybody have access. And if okay, so some big data center in Europe say, no, I'm not going to change anything. So nothing's going to change, So here in South America, Africa, everybody has to work together and make sure that we talk, and they have to be willing to make changes. They have to adapt. Otherwise, we're going to have the same thing we already have. One example that I see about this distributed data, I like when you try to get the Argo, the profilers, Argo data. They have a center, but they have distributed centers. So Coriolis and in Europe, you have in the US, and you have all the data centers. So they have distributed, they have the same thing, and then they have different centers. They have their own way to distribute the data, but they are distributing the same data in the different places, and it works. So then we have to find a way to make it work. And the other thing is, we would like to distribute, like you said, physical data, but the biological data, coastal data. So it's a huge problem. But we have the information, and people are willing to give their data. But if I doing my science here and I don't have a technician, anybody, I wanted to put my data somewhere. Sometimes it's hard for me to go, move ahead and then do extra thing to get the data done. But if you know that there's a big center, everybody's putting data there. So I think maybe this will help, to get access. Yeah.
Well, I will pass the word to Laik. I think he's has a question to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's not a question, it's just a comment in addition to what you have been sharing about data management and sharing. I just want to bring in one of the key advantages in doing that is also because I think sometimes the motive of sharing the data can make, let's say, the government or some other agency that are supporting it maybe question like, why are we doing this or why are we sharing? But the good advantage in sharing some information is like it's also help in collect feedback that will help us improve in those how to collect or how to measure this data. So like I mentioned a little bit earlier, that in the past there has been a lot of improvement in the way where even the same Argo float you just mentioned, like are deployed. And most of them, we have just realized that the way it was deployed before, we were not doing it the best way. They have to learn that based on the data they are put available to scientists, to other researchers, to do experiments with it that even the collector of the data couldn't think of. Yes, so these are one of the advantage of sharing data. Many people are out there have interesting, smart, good idea and can carry on some research question that just a single goal we may not be able to do, which will also help eventually improve the measurement of the observation.
Yeah, I think for closing the session, I would just like to add that it's important to us not only to measure and distribute the data, but also rank the data in order of importance, perhaps to the society, as Olga has given a very good example of meteorological data. We all know that in knowing the air temperature diurnal cycle is important for society, precipitation, winds as well. But when you talk about oceanography and marine science as a whole, we still don't have, which are the better parameters that we have to constantly measure and distribute it to the society. For science, of course, we want to measure air-sea fluxes, heat, momentum, CO2, etc. We want to measure currents. We want to measure sea surface temperature, etc. But perhaps the guy who is going to the beach, he wants to know if the beach is going to be there in 10 years' time, to begin with. He wants to know the wave patterns and variability. the sea surface temperature or water temperature, but we don't have a, especially here in Brazil, we're starting having that with the new National Oceanography Center that we just had approved here to start working, but we still don't have that. So perhaps we have to think about that as well. And of course, digital technologies, including neural networks, not only artificial intelligence or machine learning, we are far behind because our communities, especially in Brazil, don't have very good communication with the computing sciences community. So that's one other thing that we have to think about, in my opinion. So Roberto, it's up to you to close the session or perhaps have more discussions.
Thank you, Ronald. I thank all the presenters of the sessions. I thank you and all the comments and questions made. Now I pass to my colleague from Mulani, who rules the next panel.
Thank you, Ronaldo, and thank you to all the speakers from the previous session. It was very interesting. Now, just checking if Dr. Siko will be able to come in, but seems like I will have to go on. But for your information, I'm Fumulane Ramkwato, not Dr. Siko, as per the program. Okay, I think we will run this session the same way with the previous one. We will have 2 presentations, and then we'll have one person who will do the commentary and also facilitate the sessions with the questions, also from the YouTube. And then we have 3 speakers. We have Luciano Pezzi from the National Institute for Space Research in Brazil. We also have Dr. Sandy Tomala from SOCO, and then our commentator will be Dr. Nicolette Chang, who's also from SOCO in South Africa. I've noted what Ronaldo said now when he was saying that in terms of digitization technology, we are still behind. So I believe that this session will also give us more information in terms of digitalization, especially in terms of the value that it has when we deal with collection and monitoring of oceanographic data. So I believe that we'll have more information that will answer your question, and then we'll track fast our behindness. In the meantime, I would like to invite Dr. Luciano Pezzi to take over. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll try to share my screen if I have the permission. Yes, I do. Okay. Sorry, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much. Good morning again. Good evening, our colleagues. I'd like to thank you, Dr. Roberto Pinho, for this kind invitation. Also acknowledge MCTI for this opportunity. I'm joining this discussion now, so I'm not sure if I'm a little bit offside of the subject, but I'll try to show you some initiatives that we have here in Brazil that might be of your interest in all these subjects that we've been talking this morning. I'm Luciano Pezzi. I'm from the Laboratory of Ocean and Atmosphere Studies based on National Institute for Space Research. I'd like to bring to your attention some particularities about South America that you might know, but it's always good to stress this. South American climate is heavily driven by oceanic conditions. We have here this picture from the big El Nino in 97, and 98, and look this area with sea surface temperature anomaly is positive here. And this was in September 97. And right now, as you know, we are living another big ENSO 2023. Look, this guy here with the Eastern Pacific and Central Pacific very warm, but paying attention in the others regions in the ocean world. Have a look. Something very strange or very different is happening right now. So this is, we are facing apparently, or we have strong evidence of the climate change. And nowadays we have this ocean very warm. Well, also in South America, we have influence from other oceanic phenomena, such as Atlantic dipole or tropical Atlantic variability, which are responsible for the ITCZ location or positioning during the rainy season of this region here. So if we look a little bit more what is going on right now with this ENSO, we see strong impacts of positive precipitations in south of Brazil and a huge deficit of precipitation or drought conditions in north of South America and north of Brazil, including Amazon region. So we are living several impacts of this present phenomenon. Well, but not only the large-scale oceanic parts or phenomena affect the atmosphere or also the climate in Brazil. Here we were in our way down to Antarctica. Here we are in Brazil Malvinas Confluence, where we have the Brazilian current meeting the Malvinas Brazilian current meeting the Malvinas current, and we crossed by over this warm core eddy. And when we were crossing it, we did sampling using our micrometeorological tower in the front bow of this ship, doing turbulent measurements, and also radio sounds and XBT. And look here, what interesting situation we got here. We have a warm pool region here in this warm core eddy, and the atmosphere overlying this region is being impacted by this warm water, increasing the surface winds. If we look for the heat balance over this region, considering latent and sensible heat, short wave, long wave radiations over this region, we see that this warm core eddy, it's behaving as a source of heat to the atmosphere. Also look here, what interesting situation with the CO2 flux that we measured in this region. This region, it's well known as a source, as a sink region for atmospheric CO2. But look here in this region, because of the presence of this guy here, we have a source of CO2 to the atmosphere. So if we go from the large scale to this small scale, sometimes we don't consider in this, let's say, global budgets, the effect of the mesoscale or the microscale phenomenon that we have over the oceans that end up impacting the atmosphere and also the climate. Going to a mesoscale situation, we have the South Atlantic Convergence Zone, which is a band of clouds here. This phenomenon occurs during the summer. And here also we see the clear modulation of this atmospheric phenomena on the ocean and vice versa. We have a cooling of the sea surface temperature because of the blocking of the short waves that reach the surface of the sea, but also this guy here modifies all the dynamics and the thermodynamics of the surface ocean. But even so, we have a source of heat from the ocean to the atmosphere. And this summer, 21 and 22, was a particular and interesting summer because it was very wet and rainy because of the 7 cases of the oceanic sacs that we had during December, January, and February. But why I'm bringing all this to you? Because we use, apart from the observed data, that when we have the opportunity to go to the sea, or also when we have a buoy here, we had a cryosphere buoy. That's a project led by Dr. Ronald Souza. Our buoy was testing in this region before go down to Antarctica. And we captured many interesting situations through the observations. But also we use models. In this case here, we are using a lot of these regional models. It's a sort of regional Earth system model, where we have atmospheric model, we have oceanic model, together with a sea ice model, waves model, that can be WaveWatch 3 or SWAN, and also, in this case, sediment model. So we use these tools to try to understand phenomena and try to improve our forecasts. But moving a little forward, another project that we have here in Brazil that was born last year, it's called MONAN, which is Model for Ocean, Land, Atmosphere Prediction. It intends to be a new paradigm for advancing the weather, climate, and the environmental predictions in Brazil. MONAN intends to use a set of models, vegetation model, interior waters model, dynamic active vegetation model, surface and land model, a set of ocean hydrodynamic model, waves, and sea ice models, also coupled with the atmospheric model. So this is a community Earth System Model initiative led by INPE, but it's a Brazilian project. And what are the changes? What are the focus of let's say this program? Of course, is increase the complexity acknowledgement that we have since we began studying atmosphere and oceans coupled back on 60s and 70s, and increasing each time more with new systems within this big system. And we want to address the complexity, increasing the complexity of the system, the ensemble size, which means decrease the uncertainties that we have on numerical forecasts, and of course, increasing resources as HPC towards the resolution, increasing the resolution. That is a big challenge. So moving forward, all this system, it's within in an entire framework, which has also the problem with storage of observational data, data simulation to decrease the, let's say, the errors in initial conditions. Of course, it passes for high performance compute services. We need to have a good computer service in order to improve our work and our acknowledgement with this kind of tool, the system. Of course, the post-processing and use of artificial intelligence, not only in the post-processing, artificial intelligence is within this system, increasing or improving the parameterizations, which are those phenomena that we are not able to properly solve for lack of resolution or lack of acknowledgement or lack of the physical representation. And of course, and I'll associate all the problems that come with, let's say, the outputs, learn from the outputs, improve the or decrease the error in the outputs of those models as well. A big issue that this model or the system has is to be one unified system for all scales or seamless scales, predictions and simulations. With the same model, you can have, let's say, a behavior within this global model as a regional model, increasing the resolution where you have interest or where you want to have a better accuracy or problems better resolved. How we are dealing with it? We have an internal group from WIMP and CTI, but also we have many members from the Brazilian Academy, from the universities and other research institutes. And going back to this climate change issue, that is something that is putting a big alert in our minds. We want also go deeper in all these indices that we have of climate change. See on this brilliant paper by Lee, England, and Groiskamp, where they show the heat content increased in Southern Ocean. This is really worrying comparing 2000-2010, which is in the blue line, with 2010-2020, which is the red line. So here we have a strong indication that something is really, it's going really bad in our climate system. So as I told you, we have many Brazilian partners in this Manam initiative, also in our lateral collaborations in our research group in the INPE. We are dealing now with some international partners in this model, in this initiative. And that's it from me, from my side. I just would like to bring you some initiatives that we have here and some possibilities to explore collaborations and deepen discussions about some issues that we are dealing right now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Luciano. That was very interesting, and I had more questions, but we'll keep them to the end. And then I will now invite Dr. Sandy from CSIR SOCO.
I'm just trying the share screen button, but it's not doing anything.
Okay, Roberto.
You should try it now, please. Should be at the bottom next to the webcam icon.
Yeah, it's giving me, there we go. Sorry, options. Right, and then this should do it. All right, are you seeing my screen and hearing me clearly?
We don't see your screen yet.
Let me try again. Share screen, select, share. It's not doing anything?
No. On the top, you have a window, I think that where you can choose.
Now it's loading.
Now it's loading?
Yeah, I think we can see your Gmail, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, wrong screen then. Okay, well, let's do that. And then just... Are you seeing the screen now?
No, you're still seeing your Gmail. Sorry about that.
Oh, for goodness sake, I'm so sorry. Share this tab instead. There we go. Okay, that's looking more promising.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So my name is Sandy Tamala. I'm the research group leader from the Southern Ocean Carbon and Climate Observatory. And I'm going to be speaking today on how technological innovation and observations have advanced Southern Ocean carbon climate science from our perspective. And there's a little bit of overlap with what Laik was presenting earlier, since we're from the same institution, but I hope you can bear with me on that. So first, just to go down to the problem statement, so why the Southern Ocean? Well, the Southern Ocean takes up 50% of the ocean CO2 uptake, and it takes up 75% of the excess heat that's generated by the anthropogenic CO2 that remains in our ocean and in our atmosphere. And so it plays a disproportionately important role when it comes to buffering the impacts of climate change. And so understanding the sensitivity of the Southern Ocean to climate change is arguably one of the most important scientific and policy challenges of the 21st century. But understanding, observing, and predicting the Southern Ocean is really challenging to do. And there's a number of reasons that I'm going to go into that, one of which is that the Southern Ocean is highly variable and very difficult to observe. So on your left, you can see the video of the storm tracks, and you can see that these storms are immense, they're intense, and they're frequent. And those storms are also interacting with an ocean that has a very high variability. And you can see in the bottom right-hand quadrant of the scales of variability that the Earth models are observing. But really, when you start to get to subgrid scale resolution, you can see how the fine scale dynamics are really characterizing the system. And it's those dynamics that are interacting with the storms. But also there's multiple physical and biogeochemical processes at play. So it's not just the physics that you have to worry about, but for example, when you have these winds that are changing the mixed layer, it's altering the nutrient and the light environment, that's changing the primary production, and that's also enhancing or decreasing the biological carbon pump, which will influence the CO2 flux there as well. So there's really these multiple interactions with the physics, the chemistry, and the biology that are impacting the flux, and all of those at these high scales of variability. And of course, the observational constraints are weak. So again, what Laik was talking about earlier, but the Southern Ocean really has these big data gaps, both regionally, but very importantly also seasonally, such that we're not really sure whether the disagreement between the models and the data products are either the models not accurately reflecting these fine scale resolution processes, but also perhaps due in part to seasonal biases in the observations themselves. And so SOCO takes an interdisciplinary approach to resolving the fine scale dynamics of the system so that we can aim to improve our understanding and then ultimately improve our projections of the global climate links. And we really approach this problem through three ways. One is through empirical modeling, machine learning reconstructions, which Laik has already spoken about. The other one is through prognostic modeling, with modeling through a hierarchy of increasing resolution models that are physical, biogeochemical, and ice coupled. And Nicolette will speak briefly about that following me. But the one I'm going to be talking about is the observations. So really these high resolution coupled ocean atmosphere observations, satellite remote sensing observations, data products, and technological innovation. So our solution to the problem was really to invest in ocean robotics. And we have a number of profiling glider platforms and surface wave glider platforms. But if you want to invest in these robotics capabilities, you also needed to develop an engineering technical capability, which we did by partnering with an SME, a local SME called Sea Technology Services. And we incubated SA Robotic, which is our Robotics and Ocean Technology Innovation Center. And really, there's a lot of spin-offs that have emerged from SA Robotics. So with this technological infrastructure and the engineering support that it requires, it really has unleashed a lot of innovation around sensor development. And I'm going to highlight two examples now. The first one is our polar adapted wave glider. And again, just reiterating the issues of the seasonal bias and observations that you can see in this map, there's really very little observations in winter. And so there was a real science need to increase the number of observations of CO2 flux so that we can better constrain the global climate budget. And there are two ways that we've approached that. The first is by taking our wave glider platform, which measures CO2 flux, but we've increased the size of the hole. So we essentially cut it in half and we made it 1.5 meters longer. And that allowed us to put more solar panels on the platform for increased power and sensor load. But understandably, the sunlight conditions are very low in the winter time, so that has a limited capacity to resolve our problem. So we've also developing a hydro generator. And so this really generates additional power to support the sensors and the measurements in winter. And it's been tested in a wave tank, and it's going to have sea trials very soon. And really the outcome is going to have longer deployments, which allow us to sample during winter and to ultimately have a full annual cycle of CO2 flux measurements. Another one is our Vegas PCO2 sensor. So really the science need there was to develop a high resolution sensor that would allow us to make very precise measurements of CO2 flux, but with long autonomy to be able to be in the Southern Ocean for long periods of time and also to withstand the very harsh conditions of the Southern Ocean. And so we've developed a sensor which is very precise. It's been successfully deployed for a number of ocean deployments for up to 6 to 8 months. It's transited to the market phase with 2 sensors that have been developed, and it's also compared very well in an international intercomparison study. So now I'm just going to move on to some of the research highlights. So the first one really to look at how have ocean robotics advanced ocean climate research for us. And of course, there's many more results that I could be presenting here. I'm just touching on a couple of the highlights. The first one I'm going to focus on is insights from the Southern Ocean Seasonal Cycle Experiment. And the data on the left here that I've highlighted in red, that was from our very first glider deployments and our first SOSIX all the way, well, that was published in 2015, but I think we deployed in 2012. And they were the first gliders to ever go into the Southern Ocean, and the first time that we'd seen this really high resolution view of what's driving the system. And this publication had 2 sort of key insights, and one is the role of mesoscale eddies in the beginning of the time series, so in spring. So when your mixed layers are deep, you can see these massive shoaling events where the mixed layer shoals by up to 100 meters, and those big shoaling events are related to eddies, and they coincide with these patchy blooms, phytoplankton blooms that are much earlier in the season than if you waited for heat flux to shoal the mixed layer. And the importance there is that if you have, for example, an Earth system model that's not resolving eddies, you'll end up with a bloom initiation that is biased towards a later bloom because it won't allow an accountability of these earlier patchy increases in chlorophyll that are associated with eddies. And then in the summer period, we had these chlorophyll blooms that were really prolonged in the subantarctic zone. They were going all the way into March, so well into autumn. And the theory there was that you have this increased stratification in summer, which is preventing a deepening of the mixed layer to these really deep depths that you see in spring. But you still have these high variability. And the theory there was that high variability was driven by these synoptic winds. And then it was allowing an entrainment of the limiting micronutrient iron in order to support and sustain these blooms well into the summer season. This was followed up by another study that we published in 2015, where we took that glider data and we modeled it. We modeled some production and respiration models to get net community production. And just want to highlight here that you can see that net community production is variable at the same time scales at which the MLD was varying, the mixed layer depth. So that supports the hypothesis. Those mixed layer excursions were allowing entrainment of iron to support net positive growth. But of course, iron is notoriously difficult to measure. And what we developed later on in 2020 was an iron stress proxy, which I'm not going to go into the details about, but it really relies on fluorescence quenching, so a suppression of the fluorescence profile, which you can utilize as an iron stress proxy. And applying this proxy to glider time series allowed us in this dark black line to see how there's a seasonal increase in iron stress, and that's from biological utilization of the available nutrients. But again, these high frequency variability that shows how iron stress is increasing and decreasing at the same timescales of variability as the mixed layer excursions, which again supports the hypothesis that these wind events are entraining iron to support growth and really determining the characteristics of the seasonal cycle. And then we moved on to our SOSIX. We advanced our SOSIX experiments that now take advantage of these twinned deployments. So we have a surface wave glider measuring the ocean atmosphere CO2 flux, and below that we have a profiling buoyancy glider with the turbulence sensors on, measuring the biogeochemical and physical processes under the glider, so you can get the whole integrated approach to the system. And some key results here that were published by my colleague Sarah Nicholson in Nature Communications, really to highlight that these big wind events, so where you have these really big storms, are highlighted in red, and that is when the mixed layer deepens and is entraining deep water that's rich in DIC, and that deep water that's rich in DIC is then driving these outgassing events associated with those storms. And that's really critical, because if you want to reduce the uncertainty of the CO2 flux, it shows that you have to resolve those event scale variability that's driving those outgassing events. And then moving on to remote sensing. So just a couple of key highlights from how SOCO's application of remote sensing observations is advancing our ocean climate research. And I'm going to focus here on a paper we published this year in Nature Climate Change, where we were looking at the characteristics of the seasonal cycle. So what we did is we took 25 years of ocean color data from the OCCI initiative, and we investigated the characteristics of the seasonal cycle, so the date of initiation, termination, the duration being the time between those 2 points, the amplitude of the bloom, and the characteristics of variability. And we looked at those through these 3 biomes, the subtropical, subpolar, and ice biome. But I'm just going to show you very briefly that we saw significant trends in all of those phenology metrics that were regionally coherent across those different domains. And these results were really quite surprising, in particular the magnitude of the changes. So you can see here from the phenology ones, changes of up to 50 days per decade in the initiation termination, durations of up to 100 days per decade. And those are really key, because it determines the amount of carbon there is that's available for export either to higher trophic levels or the biological carbon pump. And really importantly to note is that these trends, for example, the trends in bloom initiation, are not being reflected in Earth system models. So if you look at the CMIP6 RC 8.5 high emission business as usual, this is a study from Stephanie Henson. And for her study, she showed that if you project it to 2100, the Southern Ocean is showing earlier blooms in almost all of the Southern Ocean. So it's all blue down here. And they were earlier of up to 10 days per decade. And when you compare that on the left to what we're seeing in observations, the majority of the Southern Ocean is actually later bloom initiations. Only the ice biome has earlier bloom initiations, and the magnitude is up to 50 days per decade. Another paper we looked at, this is another paper part of a paper we got published in Science earlier this year, looking at trends in net primary production from satellite data. And you can see from 2 different net primary production models, the CBPM and CAFE, the majority of the Southern Ocean is having significant declines in net primary production, except the ice biome, which has an increase in production, but not in the Ross Sea, which is quite interesting. And to also highlight that these trends are not in agreement with what we're seeing in Earth system models. So just if you look at the Southern Ocean again, with the CMIP6 RCP 8.5 projecting to 2100, although there's disagreement in the magnitude, the majority of models all show a trend of increasing NPP, whereas our observations over contemporary period are instead showing a decline. And then one last slide just to highlight that we are expanding this research from the Southern Ocean into global data products. So we've got a global data product for all of those phenology metrics and their trends, and that's going to be submitted hopefully this month or next month, December, but certainly before the Christmas holidays. And we've also recently published again this year a global multi-model product of net primary production. So taking 5 different models and applying net primary production to all those models globally, and that data product is available for download ESSD. And then finally, just to say that these core capabilities that SOCO has, so our high-resolution observations, primarily with autonomous platforms and satellites, our machine learning data products, and our high-resolution models are going to allow us to expand our capabilities into growing a national capability for assessing ocean carbon dioxide removal interventions. So specifically to see what the efficacy and the scalability and the risks of those interventions are, and by allowing us first to do baseline assessments and then validating our high resolution models and then using that to try to see how efficient and risky some of those interventions may be and to support policy around that. And with that, I thank you and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Senji, for the presentation. Dr. Nicolette, it's your time, and then you can also facilitate the questions.
Okay, can I present? So I'm coming from a more technical side of soccer. I run the models, but I think the challenges I come across actually speak to a lot of the challenges you've been talking about earlier, or the capabilities and opportunities we need with regard to digitizing things and how to grow our research. So let's just see what I have. So as our previous speakers have all said, global budgets, not looking at the small scale, we need to understand the small scale, and we are doing it through regional models. But just because we're using regional models, it doesn't mean we're looking at small processes. These processes impact climate change in all sorts of ways. Strengthening Earth system model projections, advancing our understanding or model parameterizations, observational-based constraints, like has shown, and Sandy mentioned a bit on our carbon dioxide removal kind of things. So addressing the uncertainties and all those scales that haven't been included in Earth system models, from a modeling point of view, we look at it through the design of our models, and firstly, our design of our models. And so we've developed a hierarchy of models, all from the global fine low resolution to high resolution grids. And as my slide was showing, it would show the 4 different resolutions ranging from 200 kilometers to 3 to 5 kilometers. But what I want to show is the computational cost of running these things. I don't know why I can't reshare.
Can you try now?
Okay. Share. Yes. Okay, so starting with, thank you. So starting with this global 200 kilometer model, we only needed up to 120 CPUs, which is nothing for a high performance computing sensor. It's very small, but when we really wanted to go 1/12 of a degree, getting all those mesoscale eddies and resolution into the ocean. So these are forced ocean models, no evolving atmosphere, but it has ice and biogeochemistry. Now we needed about over 3,000 CPUs. Okay. And then another aspect of addressing these scales is looking at complexity. So I think Dr. Petty was showing us that triangle of model complexity and resolution. Well, this is the complexity. We're looking at other ways of how can we reduce that complexity with parameterizations by understanding the mesoscale and submesoscale. But a new aspect that we're trying to look at is looking at it from the computational power. Okay, this is a resource that we use, our South African high performance computing sensor. So it's aging out now. It was built in late 2016. It has 52,000 cores, and now it's a shared resource between all the scientific community. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but when we have electricity problems, that resource is cut in half. So now we're all sharing half the resources we previously had. And so there's a lot of competition for compute power. And then following that, it is not a long-term storage situation. So Now we come into problems with hardware infrastructure. Okay, so looking forward, this is what I see. I think this speaks to what Dr. Sartre was saying earlier. You know, we need humans, all kinds of skilled humans, understanding HPC, the computing side of things, understanding how our models interact with the computers and the algorithms that run on the models. We need infrastructure, hardware and software infrastructure. You know, not only do we want to share the data that we observe in the ocean, we also have great model data, although it's huge. It's about 50 to 100 terabytes just for that 1/12 of a degree resolution model. And then also long-term sustained funding to keep that data, because that model has been in an analysis cycle for over 3 years. It's still valuable. And in terms of compute power and hours used to consume it, it's worth about, in our currency, 2 million rand. And it took weeks or maybe months of time to build. And so, yeah, I think this is basically a trend, I feel, in software, in scientific fields. Is we need scientific software developers and technicians and model engineers. And they're not the scientists, they're the support team that's producing and digitizing the products and making them available and distributing them. And yes, so there's a lot of opportunities I see for us in the future. Yes, comments. Would anyone like to ask questions to our previous speakers or talk to this or make their own comments?
Well, if I may comment, I think that you, Nicolette, you touched in a very important point that are the resources, you know, for the research, for the numerical research. It's critical. You need, let's say, from the point of view of the software, it's not only science, it's engineering together for the, you know, code optimization, and this is a different world. From the scientific specific point, it's also complicated because depending, let's say, of the kind of phenomena that you want to study, you can go for a regional model, you know, saving resource, computational resource, but you can have other problems because you don't include in regional, you know, let's say the global teleconnections or so on. On the other hand, if you go for let's say only oceanic model, you can be missing the interaction or the active interaction with the other components that are sometimes are very important. We have had experience in the past, let's say, just to elucidate not, but given an example, simulating cyclones just with atmospheric model. The cyclone behaved in one way. When coupled with the ocean plus waves, we had a lot better solution. So this means that you need to increase, let's say, the complexity of the model, of the technology, and also the resource. So it's a big challenge. Of course, not everyone will be or will have conditions to run a global model, but we need them, you know, for some activities or even to provide, you know, boundary conditions to more specific or more regional studies. And I understand that now the community is moving to these seamless tools for prediction, where you can have a global model with regional, you know, zoom in your scientific interest. But even so, it's quite expensive. It depends, you know, not only of one small group. It's a kind of community effort. It's very complex. Well, we can talk this for many hours. Thank you.
I was quite jealous when I saw you. I was thinking the kind of teams that have to build an Earth system model. You know, there's someone looking after all the different components, and thinking how many people, and then you were able to put up a slide of names of people from your community, and that's amazing.
Actually, it's open for collaborations, you know.
Okay,
What I
maybe if I can come in, see it's quite. I just have one question for Dr. Luciano, with regards to the South Atlantic Convergence Zone that you mentioned that they work very well in extreme conditions. Because currently in South Africa, we're also experiencing extreme rainy seasons. So I just wanted to know if this application of technology can assist, or maybe how can this application of technology can assist in provision of decision support tools, and maybe in terms of medication for disasters in South Africa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, can you repeat your question? I don't know if I understood right. Do you want to know about the, let's say, the tools or services for natural disasters? Is it? No.
Yes, but also if the MONA or the South Atlantic Convergence Zone, how can it be applied in our situations?
Okay.
Wherein we are experiencing rainy season.
Okay. Now, here we have two situations. What I showed to you, it's one system. It's a kind of frontal system that gets stuck over the southeast of Brazil. And its name is South Atlantic Convergence Zone. This is one thing. In this case, we were specifically studying the impact of this atmospheric convergence zone on the ocean. We wanted to know what it produces in the ocean and how the ocean feeds back on this atmospheric system, okay? But of course, understanding this process, you know, and how they behave, because in this case, its system lasts for 10 days. It depends of the situation. And let's say it stays there raining continuously. And of course, after some days, you start to have problems, let's say with landslide, flooding, you know, in the city. And of course, in Brazil, we have a specific institute that does this kind of monitoring of the atmospheric phenomena. And they do advert the society about the risks and the problems that the cities can have with the precipitation, or with landslides, or with thunderstorms, you know. It goes more or less like this. And yeah, I think that you can replicate this kind of study to South Africa. I'm pretty sure you have lots of cyclones that hits South Africa. It's a kind of monitoring, and this again is in this case for these alerts, it's a big group, you know, work, either meteorologists, oceanographers, and cartographers and engineers looking to the same problem. Each one looking for, let's say, the applications starting from one forecast. In this case that I showed to you, it was more science, basic science. Okay, we are more looking to understand how the system behaves. That was the point.
May you make a question? Can I make a question? Okay, thank you. I have a question for another matter or another subject to Dr. Sandy Tomala. I was very interested in the fact that you are putting your very nice, impressive gliders in the market. And this is very, this is sometimes not a very straightforward process for, especially for public institutions and research institutions in Brazil. So if you could talk a little bit about how was that experience of having the product of your research and development put into the market. Thank you.
It's an ongoing nightmare fraught with difficulties. But just to clarify that we haven't got a glider on the market, it's the CO2 sensor that we've developed. And we've had a lot of issues. So building it was quite straightforward. So we had some R&D budget that we worked with our SME, C Technologies, to build with a lot of input from the scientists. So that's also key because the scientists know what is needed, and then worked with the technicians very closely to develop the instrument. And then once it had participated in this international assessment comparison to show how well it worked, then we got to the point where we made 2 prototypes for sale. But now we are at that challenging part where we put out an advert for commercialization of the system to see if it could scale up, and nobody applied. And so we're still sitting in a challenging space. What we're doing now is I'm at the moment trying to find some more R&D funds to take the development of the sensor, which currently has only been tested on the Wave Glider, but to put a bit more development into it so that it can be go onto all the ships. So it will be a ship and terrestrial sensor, because the sensor itself is working really well. We just need to do a little bit more foreground IP development to make it that it can click into all of our ships and to be useful as a terrestrial. And then we're going to have to basically put out another call for commercialization, where a local SME would take up the IP and take the intellectual property, but start to manufacture the instrument themselves and sell the instrument, and then give our institution, I think it's something like 10% of the manufacturing costs or something like that, that the commercialization agreement goes, that we get a small profit of every sale of the instrument. So it's really not easy, because we didn't get into it for that reason. Again, we're scientists who develop a product for the scientific needs, but when it gets to a point that it's as good as it is, and that it is much cheaper than what's available, and it's much more robust and a better instrument, we actually are putting it to the place now where other people want it. So it is important to take the next steps and to get it to the point where it would be commercially available for other users. But it's not fun, I can tell you now. It hasn't been fun.
Yes, thank you very much. I think it will be very useful in the future if you can share with us the solution and model that you got once you have it on the market. I think we can all learn from that.
I have a question. Can I? Yes? Okay. Sandy, thanks a lot for your presentation. It was a brilliant presentation. And I have a curiosity. I work also with CO2 flux using anticovariance, doing measurements on the ships. I'd like if you can talk a little bit about the technology you are using to do these CO2 measurements. How is it? I don't know if you have this information or not.
It's in there somewhere from a while back, but look, I'm not the expert and I'm not a CO2 scientist. I'm a phytoplankton biologist, but so we use the LICOR, we sample the atmosphere and the ocean with a bunch of gas standards on the sensor, and so it's that same technology miniaturized with a mini gas canister of a standard gas on the glider. So it's really replicating, I think it's the German system with the LICOR partnership. So it's replicating that, and we still use the LICOR. So that component it remains. I hope that. Yeah. Okay.
Really? Yeah, we do the same, but with the LICOR and the ship also together with the sensor in the micrometeorological tower. So we do both on the atmosphere and also in the ocean. Yeah.
Yeah, very similar.
Brilliant. And do you intend or have you heard any discussion about heat flux?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, so we've been working on the SOCHIC project, and we work. I've just forgotten his name, from Ireland, who does the heat flux sensors. It will come to me. But we've done a big project with called Benflex. It's part of the EU H2020 SOCHIC project, where we're combining all the heat flux sensors on the ships with the CO2 flux sensors, and really looking at the influence of the skin of the ocean and how that impacts heat and CO2 fluxes over diurnal cycles and that. So we're doing quite a lot of work on that direction. And I mean, ultimately, we would like to get heat flux sensors on our Southern Ocean vessels, and start to get the eddy covariance towers to look at aerosols and other gases. And so we're not there yet, but heat flux we have done, but through collaborations and partnerships with our colleague I can't remember his name, but it's definitely something we're looking into, because it's talking to the trying to reduce the uncertainty, and I think that's where we really focus a lot of our attention.
Oh, great. We just had a project approved here in Brazil in the Antarctic program to continue doing for the next 3-4 years eddy covariance measurements. So again, it's another window of opportunities that we can talk about.
No, absolutely. And I mean, the fact is we do not currently have in-house sensors ourselves. So, even with that collaboration, we built the mast ourselves, and we attached the mast to the vessel, but the sensors themselves came from our collaborator and were, set up. And so I think that, that's one of the things that the All Atlantic collaboration of infrastructure, those kinds of things is what we really need, is to say, we're going to the Southern Ocean, we have a mast, you've got some sensors, you want to work together, let's bring them and have a look. So I think recognizing those synergies and opportunities is part of the reason the All Atlantic is around, is to try to see those opportunities where we can take existing infrastructure and put it into a new place where it hasn't been before, and start to resolve some of those uncertainties.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Brilliant.
There is a Hazel Rand from Honon.
Thank you, Roberto. Sandy, great presentation. Luciano as well. I'm very impressed. I guess one thing that called everybody's attention is the agreement both of you have on the importance of having lower atmosphere meteorological measurements at the same time as we have upper ocean measurements, both for CO2, but also other parameters like heat fluxes, as Luciano was talking. It's very important, and we had this experience here in Brazil working in both the South Atlantic and the Southern Ocean, that the high frequency changes in the atmosphere are pretty much important for biasing the expected fluxes that we have from from parameterization used in global models or even in regional models. That's very important when you're talking about heat fluxes, but CO2 fluxes as well. So taking simultaneous measurements of the lower atmosphere and the upper ocean is very important. The question I make here, and I had already made this question to Olga in other opportunities, is that all data banks that we are always talking about in ocean sciences make atmospheric measurements away from what we understand as oceanography or ocean sciences. So the big question is that really important to think on having a regional or an integrated data distribution center that is thinking about the relationship between ocean and atmosphere in every scale, from regional to global, and from temporal scales of high frequency to climate change? I guess this is the thing that we have to address. And we are only talking about, parameters that are very important for modeling, for validating models, for assessing changes, tendencies, and things like that. So when you separate those two subjects, we are thinking, I guess we are not addressing the problem as it should be addressed. So it's a question both for Sandy and for Olga. And this question I don't make to Luciano because we work together. I know his answer already.
Ronald, I'll be honest, I didn't really get the question because it felt more like a comment. Yes, I think that the two go hand in hand, and you need to know both, and you need to know the scales of resolution. So all I can really do is reflect on the comment as best I can. But I think, I'm not sure if I understood the question, but I guess my take on it is that you can't necessarily always measure the atmosphere and the ocean at the same time, which is what we aim to do in our specific case, because we're trying to integrate the drivers and the response. So in that instance, it is very necessary. But from a modeling perspective, I would say you need as many observations as you can, and they can be independent atmosphere from ocean, so long as there is as many observations as possible on what is utilized to validate the high resolution model, atmospheric components, and then your very high resolution, as many data points as you can from the ocean perspective of validating the ocean component of your high resolution model. And then you can begin to integrate them with a bit more confidence. So I'm not sure if I've answered your question completely, but I think ultimately you do want a system that is being validated with observations that is then integrated, so the forcings and the response at the right time and space scales are allowing you to reflect those important mechanisms that are driving the characteristics of the system, so that you can more accurately detect changes and trends and tipping points and weather and climate.
No, I agree with Sandy, and definitely we have to have an integration. Also, I think we are in a point in our history that we are starting to get more satisfied with the mean and the seasonal cycle, and we are getting very good estimates of the fluctuations in the variables and stuff. There are still lots of those what we call the essential variables that we still don't have a complete time series, for instance, for the essential variables. So it's still, we are getting there. And the point that I would like to put here, when we talk about, Ronald, you're talking about, okay, so let's include the data from ocean and atmosphere and stuff. But I think there are lots of the connectivities. We are still don't see them, all of them. We don't have a good comprehension of how, everything is connected everywhere in time and in space and in variables, so I think we are getting to a certain point that I think we're starting to get to know that So it's an exciting time, and data will, will provide this information, and as more we get, and the connection between the scales and stuff, I think that's the right way to get a better understanding of the system. Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you for the questions. Maybe Dr. Nicolette, you can just wrap the session before we go to Ronaldo to wrap this event.
Well, then I'd just like to thank all the speakers. But my final thought was, wow, how do we share data? Does one brave group go out there, find the money for some hardware infrastructure, start building it, and then everyone else follows? Because you need mirrors everywhere. Redundancy. And yeah, so thank you. And I hand this back to Phumlani.
Thank you, Dr. Cheng, and all the speakers. Ronaldo, can you just wrap the event? Thank you.
Thank you, Phumlani. We had planning for a round of discussions, but we have had the discussions already. We have had this morning and afternoon very rich presentations and discussions. I think I was talking with Phumlani that it opens and suggests the possibility that we do another round of this, perhaps in around 6 months' time. So I think there is lots of avenues and venues for collaboration that from what we've seen from the discussions in this morning/afternoon. So I would like to pass the words to Mr. Duke Nikan Dimeng and Ricardo, if they would like to close our meeting today. And thank you, everybody, and especially to Phumlani and Gilbert for their partnership in this. We know they are just after two very busy weeks organizing a BRICS meeting and then the Atlantic Forum. So we thank you all for all your efforts and commitment this week. Thank you.
Thank you, Roberto. From my side, I think you have covered everything, you have summarized, so I've got no further comments except what I said at the beginning, that we will continue to support these exchanges, and then as you're proposing in the next year, we'll be there to make sure that we increase the interactions between South Africans and Brazil. So thank you. And thank you everyone who participated.
And from my part, Roberto, I would just say that it was very interesting to hear your discussions. I hope the connections that you made during the event, you can strengthen in the upcoming weeks and months so that we can develop the avenues for collaboration that we identified today. You can always count on the support of the Brazilian Embassy and our consulate in Cape Town to connect you with researchers and institutions and supporting the organization of events. And I congratulate Roberto and all the organizers from Brazil and South Africa for putting the event together. And congratulations, it was very interesting. And count on us, and let's keep in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Obrigado. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Cheers.